What do you think about when you hear the word filler? Maybe you think of all those long-running battle shonen with random anime exclusive arcs, or other anime adaptations that create their own endings. While these are both great examples, filler is slightly more complicated than that. In general, filler is anything in an adaptation that's not based on its source material. However, when we take this definition seriously, we find that the concept is much broader than we initially imagined. Just think about it. A manga is simply a series of black and white images. If we take this page from Naruto for example, we see Iruka speaking to the class, Naruto thinking to himself, the Genin headbands, and Naruto performing a jutsu. But if we look at the anime, although much of the content's the same, there's a notable difference. Here, Naruto takes a couple steps towards the front, brings his hands together to sign the jutsu, then chakra and smoke forms around his body. Each of these little details are not in the manga, so strictly speaking, they're filler. This might seem like a trivial point, but what I'm trying to highlight is how essential filler is for translating a manga into an animated medium. A truly faithful anime would be nothing more than a series of still black and white images, but let's face it, that's not what we watch anime for. This is important because while it's essential, it can be done terribly wrong, and a prime example of this is One Piece. At 1119 episodes long, it seems quite impressive that One Piece is only 8% filler. But is it really? Sure, when we divide the 94 reported filler episodes by the 1,119 total episodes, we get about 8%. But once you realize that the manga only has 1,126 chapters, you may suspect the accuracy of this 8% figure. Earlier in the series, the anime was adapting a respectable 2 chapters per episode, the industry standard. But the closer we get to Wano, the more stretched out each chapter becomes. Reverie, for example, barely adapts half a chapter per episode, so while the series isn't filled with unique content like Naruto, it tends to stretch out the canon material, leading to some pretty severe pacing issues. Now I'm not trying to say Naruto is somehow immune to this issue. If you ask any serious Naruto fan, they'll have plenty of negative remarks about the anime's pacing, but I want to make it absolutely clear that the filler I'm defending is not this. Yes, a certain amount of filler is necessary to bring a manga to life, but the filler I want to defend is the popular notion of anime exclusive content. But first, it helps to understand why this type of filler exists in the first place. It should come as no surprise that animation studios are motivated by money, so their operations are structured to maximize profit, focusing on things like ad revenue and merchandise sales. Now, how do we maintain consistent revenue from ads and merchandise? By keeping our shows relevant, and what better way to do so than to have them run on a weekly basis? However, there's one big problem. An average episode can adapt 2 to 3 chapters per week, while a manga only releases 1 chapter a week, or sometimes a month, meaning that the anime will inevitably run out of content to adapt. To prevent this, many studios would either stretch out the canon or add anime exclusive content. But you may have noticed that this style of production has gone out of fashion. In the shift from the 2000s to the 2010s, more studios opted to adapt manga on a seasonal basis, releasing 12 episodes one season, then taking a break before the next. Obviously, anime studios didn't suddenly stop caring about profit, so how do you explain the shift? After all, an anime isn't really relevant unless it's consistently producing new content, and if it's not relevant, it's not making money. Well, think of it this way. 12 episodes requires a lot less resources to produce, so this seasonal approach gives studios a chance to see whether something will be successful before they go all in and commit to a full-on adaptation. Furthermore, anime studios weren't blind to the fact that many viewers disliked filler. Their initial solution was to produce canon OVAs on an irregular basis. They then sought to combine the success of these OVAs with the regular schedule of a weekly series, and the seasonal release schedule was the middle ground between the two. However, this raises the question. There are 3 main reasons people hate filler, which I'll illustrate using Naruto's war arc. The first involves momentum. Imagine you're approaching the climax of the war. Madara just cast the infinite Tsukuyomi onto the moon, and you're eagerly awaiting what happens next, when suddenly you're greeted with 24 episodes of straight filler. You can only imagine how on a week-to-week basis, having to wait almost half a year to see what happens next may thwart a lot of momentum the series was building. Closely related to this, we have a second issue involving tone shifts. Imagine one episode you're watching the critically acclaimed fight between Kakashi and Obito, one of the most serious and emotional moments in the series. Then the very next episode, you're met with Mecha Naruto. This shift in tone is incredibly jarring and leaves many viewers with a bad taste in their mouth. The third and final reason is simple. Filler doesn't contribute to the main story, which makes it irrelevant at best and boring at worst. Altogether then, it would seem pretty clear that filler is bad, right? Although it sucked to endure all this filler as it aired, Naruto's now complete, so modern viewers have the option to simply skip it. Just look up a filler guide and you'll have the perfect roadmap to watching the canon. This dissolves the first two critiques, as viewers are no longer forced to endure harsh momentum halts or jarring tone shifts. However, this doesn't address the third and perhaps most pressing critique, that it's boring and irrelevant. Now, whether you find something boring is subjective, and sure, it's irrelevant in the sense that the material is developed independent of the canon, meaning it'll never come up again. But let me ask you this. If you're a fan of a franchise, why wouldn't you want more content from it? Maybe you could argue that bad content negatively affects a series' reputation, but from a personal enjoyment perspective, filler is a no-lose situation. These independent anime arcs don't subtract from the quality of the canon, and if you dislike it, you have the luxury of skipping it. So in principle, the addition of filler either gives us more of something we love, which is good, or doesn't, so we skip it. But let's zoom in a little. How exactly can filler contribute to our enjoyment? To answer this, we have to understand the structure of Naruto as a battle shonen. Most battle shonen focus on big events and increasing stakes. In the Land of Waves, for example, our main cast is given the C-rank mission to escort Tazuna to the Land of Waves. But within this very arc, the mission turns into an S-rank, forcing the team to deal with a drug cartel and S-rank missing nin. Then, in the Chunin exams, the stakes are raised even higher with the invasion of the Sand and Orochimaru, who successfully take out the Leaf's strongest ninja, the Hokage. To keep viewers engaged, the series has to provide increasing stakes, leaving little room to take its foot off the gas. Consequently, the series doesn't get the chance to explore and develop the average everyday events of the world. In other words, this battle shonen heavy approach often neglects basic world building elements. But this is where filler comes in. Many episodes feature the more trivial aspects of Naruto's world. What does an average ninja do? What is an average day in the Leaf? What are other characters doing while the main cast is saving the world? By providing answers to these questions, the world starts to come alive. It adds subtle context to the events of the main story. We see all the innocent people that Naruto and Co are fighting for, which gives their battles more meaning. Now, some may say, Doofy, this is all filler, so none of it is real in the eyes of the story. And technically speaking, you're right. But if nothing in these series explicitly contradicts the canon, then why can't I assume that this is what a normal day in the Leaf looks like? It's a harmless little inclusion that goes a long way towards fleshing out a world I already love. So with that said, I want to take this opportunity to look at a couple examples that illustrate how filler contributes to Naruto's world building, and more specifically, examples from the original series, as this filler is the most overlooked and most overhated. After a stretch of missions, Naruto and Choji are eager to grab a bowl of Ichiraku ramen. Unfortunately, the shop is closed as Teuchi is working on a new recipe. This prompts Naruto and Choji to break into the shop. When caught by Teuchi, he offers them a bowl of his new ramen. However, Teuchi's daughter, Ayame, has been kidnapped by a ninja chef who has demanded Teuchi's secret recipe as ransom. But because Teuchi spent so long working on the recipe, his arms are sore, preventing him from making noodles good enough for the broth. Naruto and Choji are then joined by Sakura, who express sympathy towards Teuchi's situation and offer to help him in a cook-off for Ayame. This episode contributes 3 things to the Naruto world. For one, it introduces the concept of the ninja chef, a class of ninja that accompany regular ninja on their missions and prepare high-quality meals. Obviously, as filler, we never hear of these ninjas again, but the episode expresses a degree of self-awareness and devises a humorous way to explain them away. Ninjas were getting too fat when traveling with ninja chefs, negatively impacting the missions and decreasing the demand for their service. Now, given their brief existence, you may wonder why I've chosen to discuss them at all, but think about this. In the real world, new businesses are constantly opening and closing. It's a part of the economic fabric of our communities, and in this episode, we have a prime example of a business that started with a great concept, but lacked the foresight to troubleshoot potential lethal problems. In terms of greater significance, this highlights how there are many other career paths available beyond those prescribed by the institutions. So fuck being an ordinary ninja. Open a small business. Become a ninja chef. Second, this episode offers some insight into what Naruto does on his off days. He's still a delinquent, willing to break into the ramen shop to satisfy his desires, but he's also deeply compassionate towards others, willing to help Daiichi to get Ayami back. These insights are valuable because they make characters feel less like entities that exist when it's convenient for the plot, and imbues them with a sense of individuality. This type of filler makes Naruto look less like the guy who just exists to beat all the big bads, and more like a normal dude with his own personality and desires beyond what we see on screen. What I especially love is how this invites the mind to think about Naruto outside the events of the canon. How do you think Naruto prepared to rescue Gaara? What do you think Naruto did immediately after defeating Pain? Meaningless questions, but just by asking them, we allow our minds to explore a plane of existence previously ignored by the canon. This is beneficial to us, as the more we allow our mind to work on a series, the more we tend to value the series overall. The third element is how it reveals the more practical side of ninjutsu. The Rasengan is fundamentally a small but strong rotational force, so realistically, it has a lot more applications than just beating up bad guys. Here, we see that in full force, as Naruto mixes ramen dough with the Rasengan. Obviously not a groundbreaking detail, but seeing other applications of ninjutsu fleshes them out in a way that makes them feel more real. Like they're not just a plot device for beating up bad guys, but a real power that exists in the world with different uses. This is the first episode in a 5-episode mini-arc called The Sand Support Mission. Here, the Sand Village face a new threat when the rogue group, the Four Celestials, kidnaps a young ninja from their newly developed academy program, Matsuri. With the kidnappers fleeing towards the Land of Fire, the Sand reaches out to the Leaf for help. Tsunade then orders Shikamaru to lead a team of Genin to assist their allies in the Sand, much like they helped during the Sasuke retrieval mission. In this episode alone, there are 3 more contributions to Naruto's world building. For one, we learn that the Sand have established an academy program based on the Leafs. We find out that Temari, Gaara, and Kankuro are the instructors, and that the students first choose a weapon, then an instructor to work under. While this obviously gives insight into the Sand Village, it also gives insight into the Leafs Academy, as we know the former is based upon the latter. Fleshing out the training regiments in this way gives us a better sense of what the main cast underwent before becoming Genin, which again gives them this sense of individuality, an existence beyond the main plot. We also get a sense of what's going on day to day in the village while our main cast is out completing missions, which makes the world feel more lived in, like there are things going on beyond the narrow scope of the plot. For another, this episode explores the political relations between the Sand and the Leaf. As we've seen, the Sand's Jonin Council reaches out to the Leaf for help, revealing a certain camaraderie towards the Leaf. This camaraderie is reciprocated in Tsunade's reply, who, in her briefing with Shikamaru, emphasizes the importance of maintaining good relations with the Sand. In terms of world building, this demonstrates why villages are incentivized to maintain good relations with neighboring nations, as it allows them to employ other nations for help when a mission extends beyond their own nation. Finally, this episode highlights the more practical aspect of missions. We see Shikamaru break the Genin into 2 main units. First is a sensory unit comprised of Shino, Sakura, Neji, and Hinata, whose sole goal is to find the 4 Celestials. Shino's bugs cover a large area, and once found, Neji and Hinata use their Byakugan to gather more specific information. The sensory unit then reports back to a second battle unit comprised of Shikamaru, Naruto, Choji, Lee, Ino, and Kiba, who conserve their energy until the enemies are found. They then break into 2-man cells and support each Sand Ninja, with the sensory unit tagging along as medical support. Such a detailed plan and the rationale behind it is often excluded in a lot of the arcs after the first few, so seeing this sort of practical side of the ninjas is very, very welcomed. Although these were just 2 examples, Naruto's filler is full of them, and I encourage you to check some out if you skip them in your initial watch through. But that's all for now. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, my name is Doofy, thanks for watching.